Hello and welcome to the CX Files for 24th April 2025. My name's Mark Hillary, and this week I'm in a place called Aguas de Lindóia, which is in the countryside north of Sao Paulo.
If I was going to be mean, Mark, I would ask you to spell that location, but I won't. And just if anybody is curious, it's Peter Ryan here, coming to you from Montreal, Quebec. Going to be on the ground for about another week before heading out to Munich for CX Outsourcers 2025.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've been looking forward to CXO for a long time. I know that you're off to Germany this year, aren't you?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're going to be in Munich from the 6th to the 8th of May. We've got a stellar list of attendees. We've got an amazing list of speakers and some absolutely wonderful sponsors that have gotten involved. We couldn't be happier. Tracy Freeman, Mark Angus, and I look forward to the event each year. It's not just a discussion or a talking shop about what's going on in the industry, but the networking is fantastic. And Mark, as you know, having been to a number of these events, the relationships that are formed at CX Outsourcers, whether it's new partnerships, whether it's collaborations, whether it's recruitment, even acquisitions have happened at the event. It's well worth the couple of days for people to come in from around the world. And we've got very much a global event happening with delegates coming from a multitude of different countries across the globe. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I've been exploring the idea of going out to Oktoberfest this year in Munich. So you can give me a heads up on some of the best places to head to.
Well, we'll certainly do our investigations and report back.
Okay, well, let's talk about the discussion and interview this week. I talked to Tenumah, who is a podcaster, writer, advisor. He's like a CX thought leader. He was previously a CX executive in the international flower business. So he was actually spending a lot of time down here in Latin America because Colombia is one of the biggest flower exporters in the world. He's also, I suppose, a kind of a digital philosopher, because if you look at his writing and his books, he sort of thinks a lot about how technology is changing the way that we all work. And I particularly called him up because an article he wrote recently, and I read that, and it was titled "The Worst Job in Corporate America is in a Call Center, and is it even worth fixing?" And so I just thought, well, you know, it's such a controversial title. And then he sort of explains how the jobs in contact centers typically on minimum wage that we think of 20 years ago, he's kind of arguing that we haven't really moved on a lot from there, and that there's still a lot of people that are having to ask for bathroom breaks and stuff like this. So he's been sort of exploring this world. And I don't know, what's your view on this, Peter? I mean, have you seen what's your view on the progress of CX, especially in the States?
Well, it's a tough one because on the one hand, in the course of what we're doing in our industry, there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of processes in place, Mark. Like, you know, if you're dealing with an on-site center that could be having hundreds, if not thousands, of people coming through working each day, there are going to need to be some types of norms and procedures and rules that are established. That said, I think we're also at a point now where if the industry is serious about recruiting educated, skilled individuals that do have other career options, they're clearly not going to want to tolerate or put up with having time measured when they go to use the facilities, or all sorts of different elements of not just supervision, but really, like, you know, over the shoulder looking what's going on, what are you doing? People don't want to be micromanaged. And I think that this is one of the beautiful benefits that we've seen of things like remote working or hybrid working or even gig working. It's effectively not just empowering people to do a great job in regards to delivering fantastic service, but it's also trusting people. It's trusting them that they're going to be at their desks working or at their terminals working when they need to be. It's trusting them that they're going to get the job done, regardless if they take a minute or two more on a washroom break than before, or a minute or two on the lunch break. You know, the reality is, in our space, attrition is a big problem. Attrition is a factor that so many captives and outsourcers are dealing with. And one of the best ways of combating agent churn is to give agents more empowerment over how they manage their time during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, this was a large part of our discussion, really around when you see the CEOs in Fortune magazine talking about how important the customer experience is, and yet when you sort of see the reality on the ground, the experience that the customer generally has seems to be going downhill. If you look at the Forrester research analysis, the survey they put out every year, it seems that service, especially in the US, it's the worst it's ever been. This kind of contradiction is really what we were exploring, and also the idea that we often hear people saying we need to focus on CX because it's essential for business success. And Amas actually kind of pushes back on that and says, well, yeah, in the long term, if you want business success, then you need to be close to your customers. But there's a hell of a lot of businesses out there that are successful and actually don't really care very much about their customer service.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is important, and I can't wait to hear this interview because I think that there's a lot of very salient points that are going to come out from it. The biggest challenge I think that businesses need to realize, and they keep saying, well, the contact center agent's biggest threat is a robot or it's automation or it's AI. No, it's not. The biggest threat to a contact center agent staying in that role is an opportunity somewhere else in another sector, in a sector where they're going to feel more valued, where they're going to feel more empowered, where they're going to feel like they can take initiative and that they're not going to be worrying about micromanaging. I think that as we move into the second half of 2025, what's going to count in the scope of CX, again, whether it's captive or whether it's outsourced, is let's figure out what we can do to make people happy, to make them pleased to do their job, to make them want to excel, and taking into account elements such as workplace culture, processes, streamlining processes, and giving smart people the chance to really excel. That's what's going to help this problem and thereby will improve CX broadly speaking. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of successful firms out there that, at least in the near term, are not going to suffer too bad because they're delivering bad CX. But over the long term, they will. And this is something, again, that enterprise executives and their outsourcing partners really have to take into account. You can't shortcut your way to a great result.
Okay, well, this was a great discussion. I really enjoyed this conversation with Amas. So let's go straight to the interview.
Let's do it.
All right, hi Amas. It's great to connect with you. And we only connected recently, but I
That's
was
right.
looking on LinkedIn when I sent you a connection request. I saw that we have about 150 mutual connections. So we know loads of the same people. But for those who don't know you and the listeners that don't know you, could you just introduce like your advisory work, the stuff that you've published, maybe just give a quick overview of what you do?
Yeah. Again, happy to be here. Thanks for letting me have this conversation. I spent my entire career around service and contact centers. I started on the technology end. I used to build technology for call centers back then. I've run some of the largest contact centers for many years. And then I also advise companies on how to fix customer service. But these days, I am a bit of a troublemaker. I'm describe myself as a customer service evangelist. And I hope to spend the next, last 10 years of my career, if you will, trying to fix what I think is a broken system in customer service for the humans, right? It's broken for customers, and I would argue it's even more broken for service employees. And I think it doesn't have to be that way. And so a lot of what I do now is write and do podcast and talk about how do we first off exposing the problem and then talk with people about how do we fix it.
Okay, cool. Well, I read an article that you recently wrote that was
Yeah.
titled the worst job in corporate America is in a call center. And is it even worth fixing? So you're kind of like calling everybody out right there in the headline. But if you read into the article, I think
Yeah,
the three kind of key points you were saying in your analysis were that contact center employees have got no freedom over their hours. Your colleague can be going to lunch 10 minutes before you, and you've got no freedom to go with them. They're rated and checked all the time. It's the only job where you have to sit with your boss, like asking you about your worst experience in the last week. And the
right.
goal is to perform like a robot. But I guess, hasn't this always been the case? I mean, hasn't this always been the way that people have seen jobs in contact centers?
Yeah, it didn't start this way. I'm doing research for a new book I'm writing, and I've gone back all the way to the 1800s. And it didn't start this way. This whole call center thing started in part because we invented the telephone. And in the past, everyone had to go to a physical location, and it was bad for your brand. And when we got this technology, companies viewed it as this is a way to build loyalty. Now, keep in mind, we are in the early 19th century here, and there was no marketing at scale as you had now. And so by the time you got to call centers, it was about efficiency. How do we get you to a human as quickly as possible so that you like us more, so that you buy more stuff from us? Something then began to change. You get into the early 20th century when marketing become industrialized, and companies sort of figured out that, well, the only way to build loyalty is not through providing you good service. I can manufacture loyalty. I could manipulate you into buying stuff. I can manipulate you into forgiving me when I screw up. I have this whole machine. Then from that point on, it became all about ruthless efficiency. So fast forward into the call center, it became efficiency, ruthless efficiency first, and then loyalty second. So I would see the point that since the modern call center started, it became about how do we do this thing as cheaply and as fast as possible. And if you follow that mantra all the way through, it has now gotten worse. I would just argue that what it is today in 2025 is it's taken that maxim and it's taken it to an nth degree that I don't even think those who pioneered the contact center industry in the 60s and 70s could have ever dreamed of.
Yeah. So you would say that even as they started switching from in-person visits and even answering snail mail, it was that industrialization of the telephone system,
Right.
the telephone answering. That's when they really started introducing efficiency as the priority.
Yeah. So, remember, service for most of human existence was not about efficiency. It was about, Mark, you bought this thing from me. I'm going to take care of you because it's important. The only way I'm going to get more people to buy this is you're going to go talk about it with your friends and your deal. So I needed to do that right. Then we ran into problems of, scale. I had one person in the shop. Now let's use this thing to drive efficiency. But at first, it was still about I cared how Mark felt about this service experience because it mattered. And then once you decouple that, now it is simply about efficiency. And to make my point, you don't actually have to believe what I'm saying. Just look at the road we've been on here over these years. Well, we invented the deal when we were using the ACDs to route calls. And then it was given a scale. Then we're like, well, we could do better than this. Well, let's do some automation so that people don't talk to humans at all. We found that that's cheaper. Oh, that's cheap, but that's not cheap enough. Well, let's outsource it. Are there cheaper humans around the world that we can send this thing to? Okay, great. Well, you know what's cheaper than even a cheaper human overseas? How about automation using AI and IVR and chat where there is no human, regardless of their cost in there? This isn't a value statement. It's just, you just watch the behavior of the entire industry, across, companies. And what I've just described to you is the progression we've been in. And then the few humans that you then have to pay real money to, how do I squeeze more and more and more and more savings out of it? And it's because inherently I just think this whole job is a necessary evil. It's like taking out the trash, meaning, when your garbage man does his job, you don't care. He's just a net. You wish the garbage didn't exist. The only time you even think about your garbage man is when he doesn't show up. That's how
Yeah.
people think about the call center. It's like, it's just there. If I said to you right now, Mark, that I want you to pay an incremental dollar on your garbage service, you're going to push back. You're going to go, no, I would like to pay less, Amos. It's just garbage. Take it out. It's not you saying it's not important. It's just like you don't see any value being created from it. You just view it as something that needs to be done.
Yeah, yeah. But if I skip through the pages of like Harvard Business Review or Fortune or Forbes, I'll see CEOs endlessly saying how much they value great customer service. Great customer experience is what brings our customers back to us. So this is the kind of like the strategic mantra. But
Hmm.
how come then we still think of these jobs actually talking to the customers as minimum wage?
Yeah, great point. I think people misunderstand and take some of these CEOs literally. When you hear them say this, I too used to be go, oh, why do you say this? And then I actually began to watch their behavior. And I think, and I don't want to paint everyone with a broad brush, I think there is a vision of the future. I want to be very, very generous here that says humans are inherently inferior to automation because they view it as in the top need of every customer is speed and efficiency. And their secondary need is the emotional part. So if you have that view, then you don't see the human as the center of the show. Like if you flipped it, if you thought instead what customers need more than anything else is the emotional and what have you, then you flip that view. So if you then have that view, then, well, humans are going to lose. You want automation. And in fact, you want to prevent human contact as much as possible because, you know, you can kind of do synthetic emotional bonding, right? So, there's bots that can show emotion and show this. You can synthesize that. And some people might call it, I disagree with that view, to be fair, but I am trying to see the other side. And I think that they just fundamentally think that, look, Amos, the service part is not why these people are buying from us. It's important, but it is superior to do it with automation and try and synthesize the emotional component. They do that with AI and they do that even with the humans, which is why they hire these folks and, tell them how to be nice and kind as though humans don't have that inherently with them. They want it as a secondary part of this. That's my theory of the case is that I just don't think they really believe humans is at the center of that equation.
And I mean, if humans are not at the center of that equation, then that means
Yep.
your service team is not at the center of your own vision of how you're serving customers. So how do you build like a great CX strategy? How do
Yeah.
you claim to serve your customers really well if you're not really supporting your service team?
So Mark, I'm breaking news on your show because I'm working on a new book coming out this summer. And I'm glad you had this question because I spent a lot of time thinking about this. There's a part in the book I'm writing that comes for the customer. The customer shouldn't be let off the hook here. I mean, all of us as customers. And the reality of it is possible to build a great brand without a great human focused service. I mean, there are some bad ways of doing it. You can kneecap your competition, think the cable and internet providers, right? You can make the uncompetitive, but I think you can also focus on utility, like cost and convenience. I think it was the CEO of, I think it was DoorDash many years ago. He got in trouble, but I think people missed his whole point. He described customers as promiscuous. and, and he's onto something that says that, for all of the belly aching of customers demanding human-based service, you can look at every data you want. Customers hate your IVR. If you're listening to this, they do. They hate your chatbots. Yes, it's good. universally, ask any customer in any industry, they want human-based service. Although, when it comes down to it, the reason I am coming for customers also in this book is we get the customer service we deserve. We get the government we deserve. And too often we are too fickle as customers. A company comes in and does the thing, and then they come back next week and here's a 20% off coupon, and we're all back there again. The anecdote I like is Spirit Airlines. I was doing some work on them many years ago, and I was looking at these god awful, every metric you want to look at from a CSAT perspective. And then I double clicked into it. And then I found that the people who hated Spirit Airlines the most were loyal Spirit Airlines customers.
Yeah.
And so I think there's been complacency on all sides. I think that there's been complacency, particularly on the customers. There's some macro events around lack of competition in certain industries and consolidations. But more often than not, part of my revolution is to encourage all of us as customers to actually, behave as we say, to actually say and mean it that this is important, and then behave accordingly with our wallets. And I think until that dynamic sort of changes, I think companies have found ways around it. I'll give you an example of a great CX thing that people likes to put up as a model. Amazon. I mean, Amazon from a retail perspective. And you'll hear all of these guys, Amazon's great to that. And I don't dispute that. But Amazon's vision of the world is one that says, we think customer service is bad. We think that every single phone call that ever happened should have never happened. And we're going to build systems and what have you to prevent them. And when you do have an issue, you will not talk to anyone and you would like it. I would argue that my loyalty to Amazon is not emotional at all. It's utility. My loyalty to Amazon has to do with everything but the emotional part. It's the convenience, it's the cost, it's the speed, it's all of those things. And things, by the way, that if Amazon fell off the face of the earth, of course, it's not going to happen, and another company showed up tomorrow and did the exact same thing, I will not miss Amazon for 1 second. Because I don't have any of that. It's the 7-Eleven experience that I think we're headed, which is I love my 7-Eleven. I don't have any emotional attachment to the people, to the brand, none of that. I have an emotional attachment to walking in, the speed and convenience of what I want. And I think that has some legs, but I'm more of the side of I want to build actual emotional connections with people.
Okay. I mean, does that mean then that, that almost devalues using the customer experience to create loyalty and to bring customers back or to create customer retention? Because, I would say that like your Spirit example, you can map that to Ryanair in Europe. It's pretty much a very similar sort of experience where it's the most popular airline in Europe, but go online and look at Ryanair memes and Ryanair jokes. Everybody hates Ryanair, but
that's right.
But it's the same kind of thing. People still go because of the price. They know they're not going to choose their seats. They know they're not going to get any nuts or water. But they still choose it for the price. So I guess it's it for some businesses that must work then. But I guess there must be somewhere it's still valuable to retain customers.
Oh, yes. Let me put a caveat to that before the headline goes that CX doesn't matter. I think it's like there are multiple ways to have a long-standing business. And it just so happens that if you go around the experience route and build emotional bonds with customers, it is the most long-standing way to do it. It'll give you more longevity than you can ever dream of. And it is also the one that is most predictable. In other words, the moment somebody comes in and out-conveniences you and out-costs you, your customers will not bat an eye. Like, I go back to the 7-Eleven example. I keep calling the a convenience store next to my close by my house, the 7-Eleven. It's not even a damn 7-Eleven anymore. I didn't even notice because I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? And so but I also want to caution, and I come from some of this pundits on LinkedIn as well, who come out and say the only way to build a business is it's just not true. I mean, stop it. If that were true, we would not be on this podcast talking about the experiences we have. There are multiple ways to be successful in business. I mean, go back to some industries, the cable and the internet. They spend more money on lobbyists than anyone else. You just kneecap your competition, and voila, you have it. We talked about convenience. You can out-convenience your competitions, but the problem is over the long run, something or someone is going to come and disrupt you. Someone's going to come in and be able to do that thing at a cheaper cost. And if you do not have that emotional bond, customers are gone. That's the case to me for customer experience. Not that it's the only way to do it. It's the most long-standing, sustainable way to build loyalty with customers.
Okay, okay. And I'd like to just go back to the contact center because
yes, please.
We had a guest recently who talked about the freelance model, like gig economy for customer service agents. And some of the specific things that he was talking about was how if you let the agents work from home, choose their own hours, choose the brands that they're supporting, then a lot of the problems you were talking around in the contact center kind of vanish. So do you think that's viable, or do you see problems with that?
I think so. The way I like to think about it is there are 3 layers of meaning that contact center employees and all employees get. The first one is the first layer is meaning from work. So think things like pay and those kinds of things. So meaning because I do this job, it allows me to pay my bills and what have you. That's meaning from work. So while I'm not work, I expense it. The second layer of it is meaning at work. And I think that's what you're referring to here. And I talk a lot about that, meaning like while I am here at work, I'm getting meaning from it. I don't feel like I have autonomy. I can go out and I can do stuff. I can set my own breaks and lunches. So I welcome all of that because that gets us to level 2. Level 3 then becomes meaningful work. And that is a much harder bar to cross. And that's when you then get into some of the things I was highlighting is, there's autonomy of I want to set my breaks and lunches and what have you. That's in level 2. And by the way, most contact centers are barely in level 1. So if you can achieve that, you would be in the top 5 percentile. But there's a second level of autonomy where there's this policy that makes no sense. My good friend Bob, he had one of those suitcases with the batteries in them. He calls the contact center. They think it's dead. It's not charging. So he orders a new one. 25 minutes later, he goes, oh, the old one charges. Calls them back and says, hey, I need to replace it. And they said they have a policy that after 30 minutes, you can't return the battery anymore. 30 minutes after you place the order. And so the autonomy we're talking about here is Bob, my friend, and the contact center rep both know that this is a stupid policy because Bob says, I waited on hold for 8 minutes. Even your ridiculous 30 minutes, it was because of your hold time. And there was no getting around it. And so the level 3 then becomes, can you give them meaningful work where they feel like I am here empowered to do a job. I can override stupid policies. I can talk to, and I can really make a difference for my clients. I think that's level 3. That's a long way of saying absolutely. I think those kinds of efforts gets us to level 2. And if we can get to level 2, by the way, most jobs on earth are in level 2. It'll get us caught up to people in marketing and people in other departments. And I will be a happy man. I just want to point out there is that one layer that's a little bit harder to get to, but I will be very pleased if we get to at least just, level 2 in terms of meaning at work.
Okay, cool. Talking of progress then, I just wanted to ask you about one of your books. 4 years ago, you published Waiting for Service, an insider's account of why customer service is broken. Do you think much has changed since that was published?
Well, the data says things have gotten worse. Um, and it's worse on all sides. And I want to be very balanced here in that, I wrote that book because I felt like the general public didn't really have an understanding of what the other side of customer service was. And as I said earlier, I'm working on the next book now, and I'm deep into the research, and I've looked in it, and every metric you want to look at, whether we're back to where we were. We were making progress on CX till about 2018, and we have reversed everything. We are back to 2010 levels, depending on what metric. I look at the customer rage survey that looks at it asks tons of questions. My favorite one is, are you angry enough with the client, with the company to want revenge? Like you want them to hurt. And for most of its history, it was a nothing burger in
Mm.
the survey. Today, as we speak here, it's now pushing 10%. One out of 10 people want to burn down the headquarters of the companies they do business with. So no, things work. And then I always say this, and I mean it. If you think companies treat you badly, wait till you see how they treat service employees, those in person, and the ones I'm most familiar with, those in sort of the contact center. So, no, sir, we are worse off than when we were in 2021. And this thing is going to a head. You are seeing violence, both verbal violence and physical violence happening between service workers and customers. We're not headed to a good place. If I were to ask you right now and said to you, tell me 5 companies, national brands, that you are proud of the service they offer, I'm going to be willing to bet you are not going to get to 5. If I asked you the other way and say, tell me 5 that you are disgusted with, well, we will be here for several hours. So that is the state of where we are today. And, the quote I put on one of the quotes I put on that article where I said, federal prisoners have more freedom than call center employees was not mine. That was copied and pasted from Glassdoor. These are the actual employees themselves saying that. So we are in a much, 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 much worse place than we were 4 years ago.
All right. Well, just to wrap up then, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you about the automation debate because you mentioned
Yeah.
it a couple of times. You said about AI is coming in and offering the opportunity to handle the kind of non-emotional interactions. But the kind of argument that we increasingly hear is AI is handling, a big stack, a big percentage of the simpler inquiries, which allows the humans to handle the troubleshooting, the interesting stuff, the stuff that's much more complex. Does that change how much they get paid and the respect that they have for the job they're doing?
Yeah. I think ironically, to my chagrin, service leaders do not have the wheel when it comes to the vision of what service is going to be. They have ceded that ground to the technologist. And I don't think that's a good thing. But if you believe that's what's going to be the case, and that's the route we're on, you are damn right. The service job is about to change, and you are correct. It's going to get more pay and it's going to get more respect. It's going to do that because their vision for service is to eliminate the current job as it is. I don't think what you just described goes far enough. If you just look at all of them, they have an ROI calculator that says, how much do you pay your employees? And buy this agent and it'll be cheaper. What we're going to be left with is a job where primarily the humans are good at managing other agents. By agents, now I mean AI. So if you just fundamentally think about that job and the skills required and what the job fundamentally is, it is a biz analyst type person who understands enough about technology to make that job work. No, I would rephrase what you've just said and say that the technologists have the wheel. They will eliminate what we call center agents job. In fact, Microsoft put out an article last week that says from now on, when they refer to the word agents, they do not mean humans. so, so, so let's be clear. This new job with greater respect and greater pay, it's because the vision of agentic has taken over. And what you now have is a human whose job is to manage these bots and then show up and interact with the customer after its minions of bots are failed or were not good enough to handle this. And that is a completely different skill. Yes, it's going to be higher paying. I don't think that is a good thing, in case my bias wasn't clear. I think if we end up there, we do not end up in a better place. But I think that's where we're headed.
All right, Amas, that is great overview. Thank you very much. I'll make sure that the link to the article about is it even worth fixing is in the show notes. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.